right, so if you're just tuning into this, our recording system on the official live AMA in the Discord server gave us some trouble, and so therefore I am going through with Solana ID and Nyan Heroes to redo them, and they'll be a little more intimate, a little bit more back and forth, good conversation, etc. So with us, we have Simon from Solana ID. And Solana ID is building a digital reputation system that allows users to earn for their data and become provably human. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Simon?
Yes, actually, I have to add some stuff because proving humanness, I think, is something that has been around for a while now in Web3. And Solana ID is going much, much further beyond of that. We've been building in the ID space for a while and we know the market pretty well. And I think there are some teams out there, just to name some names, I think Civic is doing an awesome job, for example, in the whole proof of humanness part. We're more about exploring your digital footprint, which goes much more beyond just the proof of humanness, right? Like we're interested in all the things you've done in the internet, and we're analyzing your footprint throughout Web 2, Web 3, and several chains. And then basically we give you a measurable reputation score on top of that we can pass on to verifiers that are interested in the credibility that you bring to the table entering the application.
So not only be provably human, but also provably how you are human on the internet. That's very cool. Can you tell me what a digital footprint means? What is that in context of Solana ID?
Yeah, so the way we're set up is we're basically doing two main parts of analysis. So the first part is on-chain. So we're looking at the activity of the wallets that you connected. So we have a wallet aggregation feature where you can either log in with one of your wallets or add several other wallets, because most Web3 users today, and I think in future, will have multiple accounts, obviously. And to have a holistic picture of who you are on chain, we're interested in all the accounts that you're carrying around. But you still have the right to decide what wallets you want to your Solana ID. So you can bring them, and we're going to check the activity throughout Web3, which can include a myriad of things. We can touch on what exactly, but it's basically on-chain analysis, things you did with your crypto accounts. But then the second part is the off-chain credentialing. So we also allow users to basically on-ramp off-chain data into a secure data vault. That's the solid vault, where you can store credentials ranging from social media accounts to your Discord servers, to your GitHub repos or Steam accounts, depending on what kind of activities you do. You can throw all that stuff into your data vault. And then based on those two containers, which is on-chain and off-chain data, we can calculate the solid score, which is basically a snapshot of the things you've done. And if you have enough data in your data backpack, then the chances are high that you have a high solid score. And we call the upper zone the win zone, because that's where the perks appear that you will get from our ecosystem partners.
So would you say that it's actually deeply important? I know that there's a lot of like in sort of the current meta with a lot of airdrop farming and other stuff is essentially sibling protocols. Would you say that it's with Solana ID, it's more important to have like a long, meaningful wallet history than to have many separate wallets?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a long history is always a huge plus, because if you have a wallet for multiple years, you have a huge record, right? Like if you scroll down your Phantom software, whatever you're using, your activity log is like endless, because you did a lot of transactions, received a lot of tokens, sent a lot of tokens, own a lot of NFTs, and so on and so on. So the length and the wallet age itself plays a role as well. So actually, we're looking at the age of the wallet. That's one of the variables that has a certain weight in the score. So I would say the age of the wallet definitely plays a role, and the depth of the data that you're bringing with you is highly reliant on the age of your wallet. But just to add on that quickly, we also want to allow users that are new to Web3 to already bring an identity with them, because we might have people that like the narrative of Solana ID of this data to earn model. And they are like, okay, I'm used to Web2, I'm used to corporates gobbling up data and then selling it without they have consent, but without your knowledge really, and especially without the monetization part on your end. And I think that's a narrative that Web2 users can fully wrap their head around, and we know that by fact. So I think we can even onboard a lot of Web2 users to something like Solana ID and give them perks for their data. And they can come and on-ramp their off-chain credentials, and that this will also help them to increase their solid score and give them some perks, even if their wallets that they just connected are brand new. Maybe they just logged in with an email, and we created the Solana wallet below the hood, and they're brand new to Solana ID, but now they are on-ramping a lot of off-chain data that has a long term. That's another way to build up your Solana ID.
Sweet. So I think to tie into a narrative that many people might understand, which is the sort of the data is the new oil. This doesn't
Mm.
necessarily solve for, the big corporations and owning your data from them, but you start to create your own sort of, I guess, oil well of your own data with Solana ID. Is that correct?
That is actually a very nice analogy, I would say. We're just turning the tables a bit, right? Like we want to shift the focus following the Web3 ethos and narrative of bringing more power to the peers, which are the people, which are the users that are interacting with each other without a lot of middlemen. And with Solana ID, with the setup that Solana ID has, we do have this portion that gets shared with the peers, which is something completely new that we're not used to yet, being born into Web 2, right? But there's a lot of potential, but I think we need to wrap our head around this new narrative that data can be owned by users instead of corporates. It's not easy to grasp because we're not used to that stuff, but it is possible with the right tech stack. It's a great way to do. And I think the future potential for such a project is huge because we can literally replace the old ways of sharing data on the internet, which are the Googles, the Facebooks, and the big corporates that are making trillions on the data that you own.
Right. It's interesting because, like, in real life you sort of own your personhood, but on the internet you sort of sign up and then create it with
Mhm.
these companies that then own that data, and it's not
Mm,
portable. So would you say, like, you're kind of creating in
mm,
you're almost creating your own unique identity for the first time
mhm.
maybe on the internet? Is that correct?
On the internet, yeah. But that
Yeah.
is not something I have to say for fairness. That's not something that Solana ID invented. That's something that self-sovereign identity as a whole, as a concept and as a sub-vertical invented. And the SSI industry so far has failed to find product market fit and monetization and business models that work. And that is what we're trying to solve for Solana ID. We want to use SSI as an identity for the first time in a business model that actually works.
Right, right. So, is there any projects that you might look back at that sort of attempted to create a self-sovereign identity? And where were their failure points? Was it that, PMF, like they didn't have a good incentivization structure, or was it something
Yeah,
else?
yeah. That is the big narrative that we've seen so far, that companies fail to find a way to make money, right? Like if you're building something that makes the world a better place, that's great. But if you don't find any way to fund your project, either through external funding or whatever foundations or some, if it's not reliant on your business model, that's okay. You can find a way maybe, but so far no one has. I think you need to build a scheme that works for all parties involved, which is also the company that's building the framework. So far there has been a lot of attempts in the past. There has been, for example, there's some projects like Uport or Sovereign. I think those are prominent examples of actually very, very viable products and companies that have been around in the 2017, 18, 19s. And those guys are not there anymore. Like the companies failed, and there might be still a website of Sovereign, but those guys are not doing anything. But the people that have built those companies or that have worked in there, they are now in other companies that are still related to the identity field, trying again to find the needle in the haystack, which is how to make money with SSI. And we've been in the space as well for a long time, and we know that problem very well. We've tried to crack that nut for a while, and now with Solana ID, we have found that model where you can bring several stakeholders, essentially apps that are trying to identify specific users and target specific users to increase their marketing efficiency, which is a very real use case and a very real problem to solve, especially in Web3, where user acquisition cost is insanely high. And then, of the other side, you have users that want to leverage their footprint, that want to earn for their data, that want points, that want rewards and perks and whatever they can get their hands on, right? And bringing those two together with a stable framework in the middle that mitigates is something that is viable and where you can actually make money on several fronts and then distribute it throughout the system that everyone has something out of it.
Yeah, cool. So I guess how do we connect this to what people might know within sort of the Solana ecosystem as of today, right?
Hmm.
Like something like airdrop farming, right? So you go and
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
all these point systems and all this stuff. Does Solana ID replace this, or does it improve this at all? Like, does it make
Hmm.
the targeted sort of users who are actually using the product more rich? Is that richer, or is the
Yeah.
wallet history play into that at all? Yeah.
It's in one sentence, it's just creating more fairness in the Web3 space and successively in the internet as we move from Web3 to internet again someday, hopefully, right? But What I mean by that is simply that right now there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of accounts that are not identified, where you don't really know who you are airdropping your tokens to, who are farming your points, and we know that it's being, what's the word? It's being kind of infiltrated by stakeholders and actors that are not there only for good intentions, that just want to get the most bang for the buck and the most out of it, out of that system. And I don't think this is healthy for the ecosystem. I think it can even break Web3 if we continue on that path. Understanding that identity is the key to solve this problem is also understanding that identity can actually fix Web3, but we need to implement those frameworks and we need to build them in a way that they can be adopted by all stakeholders, which is admittedly a big task, right? Because you have to convince a lot of the apps to integrate your solution and to use the solution. You have to convince the users to come to your, but I think you can, again, use crypto incentives and the tools we have in our crypto toolbox to build them and to go-to-market strategy that really takes off quickly, right? And we're actually experiencing this early on already.
Yeah. So how are you experiencing it? I know you've mentioned Honey a few times in the prior AMA. Do you want to go into that a bit?
Yeah, so I mean, Honey is just a good way to explain to people the kind of high level use case, because Honey, for people who don't know the company, is basically an automatic discount and rewards platform that has seen insanely growth in the Web2 space. So what they do is very straightforward. You just go to your cart, you want to check out whatever you want to buy, and you have that kind of discount code field, and you're like, ah, shit, I want the discount. So you go somewhere else, you search for a discount, and you're going to abandon your cart. So what Honey did was it pitched something to the people that are selling stuff, so the shops, that resonated with them. And they pitched, hey, we're going to help you to maintain and retain the users on your shopping cart. And they pitched to the users, we're going to help you to automatically fill that discount code with a code that is tailored to you and to your shopping experience, to the shop you're in right now. So both parties are happy. Honey made a lot of money and got a lot of users, got bought by PayPal for like $4 billion in 2019. Right, that it was sealed in 2020. So they've been very successful with that model. And obviously there's some changes. We used to tag ourselves as the Honey of Web3, but I think our current tagline, which is personal perks on chain, is much better, because we're not copying Honey, but there's overlaps because we're doing the same user experience. We're helping the user who logs into an app with the wallet to get instant rewards while logging in. Very straightforward. So you log into an app and the app already knows some of your data credentials, because you have your Solana ID holder. So you're bringing some credentials with you, and they can now tailor the experience to you, give you discounts on trading fees, give you any kind of rewards that might be tailored to you as a user, because you have a certain track record that differs from other people. And this kind of tailored and targeted approach helps to maintain or retain users and helps the apps to eventually earn more money on the user. And it also helps the user to have a much better user experience navigating through Web3. Right? So again, both sides are happy, similar to Honey. And that's why we used to coin ourselves as the Honey of Web3.
So maybe one of these user experiences or use cases for a dApp would be like, okay, I want to see what wallets have been in Web3 for a while, and they got several airdrops, but I'd like to see which ones didn't sell it and then interacted with the app, and then sort of maintain that interaction over a period of time. Is that something that you could use Solana ID for, to sort of target those users? You're like, okay, these are high value people who actually engage with the things they're getting airdrops for. Is that a use case?
Yeah, we like to call them power users, right? Power users are users that are very active on apps, that are not only farming airdrops, but they're actually holding onto them. They are involved in the projects. They have certain roles within the projects. They're contributing to communities. So they are just active and honest people that are trying to navigate Web3 in a way that gives them incentives. Obviously, they have something in return, but they also use the applications in an honest way. Right? They're not trying to break any system. They're not trying to find the loophole to expose it and make a lot of money to the disadvantage of the company or other individuals. And everything I said right now is very high level, but you can break it down into credentials and into data points that you can see on chain or off chain, depending on what we're talking about. And you can put it in a model that can be read, right? And this is exactly what you're saying. So we can solve those problems.
Yeah, amazing. I'm curious, how difficult is Solana data to parse?
Say again, I didn't get the question.
How difficult is Solana data to parse? I have a friend who's working on a tax software, and he's definitely chewing glass.
That's the right term, probably. It's not an easy thing to build. The good thing is we have good experienced people in the team ourselves, and we've been in the ID space for a while. We know how to handle data sets. We know how to make sense of it. But it's a task that you have to work on passionately and for some time to really crack the nut, especially on Solana. There are some technicalities that you have to work around. But yeah, you have to choose some class. But I think if you're an entrepreneur in Web3, you have to kind of go through that path. It doesn't matter what you're building.
Yeah, totally. Could you speak on the sort of the targeted ads model a little bit? I think that the ads and targeting has kind of a dirty connotation, but as I understand it, you flipped it on its head a little bit. Could you maybe give me a couple examples of how that could be useful to maybe a Web 2 company and then another also a Web 3 company other than the airdrop?
We like to say that we are building targeted ads that feel like perks. So it's not want to reinvent the image that advertising has, because essentially ads are about gaining attention of people in a way that talk to them, right? So you have to know your customer to a certain extent, which is in Web3 very difficult because people are inherently private, and you don't really have the models yet in place that apps can adopt to know who they are dealing with. So in Web3, most apps are dealing with strangers in compared to Web 2, where you actually have customers, not strangers. So that is something that we want to change. And if you manage to present something, let's say you're logging into the app, and we are, for example, in conversations with some of the apps in Solana that have a lot of users that are like highly frequented. Is that a word? Yeah, there are a lot of people coming to the app, going through it, and you can now show the user add wallet login, a little pop-up in the corner that is tailored to the person. So let's say you're navigating to DEX and you're logging in with your wallet, and you're a Solana ID holder, and you can be identified as a big liquidity provider on other DEXs, even on EVM, for example, where the Solana ID app usually has no way to tap into that data. Now logging in, the app knows, okay, oh, this is a big LP provider on other DEXs. Maybe we should try to offer him something that makes him want to provide liquidity as well to our pools. So you can, as with higher APYs for a month or for 2 months, you have to come up with some offers. So the ecosystem partners that we're onboarding, they are usually coming up with very custom perks in exchange for basically a Solana ID that has a certain credential set or solid score that they bring on the table. And the user now feels like he's really being treated in a very positive and good way, because they are seeing an offer that actually matches exactly their ID, let's say, their who they are on the internet. And I think this improves the user experience of the user instead of annoys him. The opposite. I think what I find annoying is ads that are completely and has nothing to do with what I'm looking for. Like this is something that it's just clogging up my browser. So if I actually see something like a discount or reward or anything that's nice and that actually suits my track record, I'm happy. So this is why we say targeted ads that feel like perks.
Right. This is interesting because I think like a lot of ads as they are today, there's all these implementations like Facebook Pixel and stuff that try to gauge your purchase behavior and your financial behavior, but it's kind of low fidelity, right? Like I remember at one point I bought a watch through a Facebook ad several years ago, and I still get watch ads because of that. And it's like, oh, I don't click ads. I don't do that. And so like the amalgamation of that is interesting. Would you say so? I think like, and maybe generally, go ahead.
But I think this is exactly why we need a little bit more power to the user, because you should be able to decide who you are, compared to Web 2, where the company decides who you are based on some data that they collected that could be true or couldn't be true. But with Solana ID, you have a user interface where you can manage your ID credentials, you can on-ramp, off-ramp, you can decide also who can tap into the data and who not, who do I want to see ads from, feel like perks, and who do I not want to see perks from. So it's again turning the table, it's putting more power to the user, which improves the ad model itself. Now this sounds high level and like something very new, but I think looking forward to a couple of years, the internet is going to change a lot, and I think a model like this in the next stage of the internet is super valuable and very feasible. So yeah, just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of sort of the like advertising itself as an industry goes through like several iterations over decades. You have like billboards and like radio advertising, and sort of every decade or so there's a very new thing. And for the most part, I don't think anything's changed since I don't know, 2010
Mm.
or around then,
Yeah.
when Facebook and Instagram stuff spun up their ads. So I think this is
100%.
super interesting. Let's see. Can you speak a little bit more on like the granular control that users have? Like if there's like a company that wants my data, do they have to like request
Yeah.
that, or do I just have like a setting that says like anybody can access it? How does that work?
Actually going to put a lot more content on our Twitter because we're pre-launch. So we're just launching the waitlist now. We have already a couple of thousand in a sign-up list for the last product we've built, which is DSID, which is very simple. And in those videos that we're going to launch now on Twitter, you can see some of the user flows. Just to describe it already on the vocally, you have a dashboard that is your privacy control dashboard. You may log into there and check your verification history. So you can see what kind of companies and DApps tapped into your data backpack, into your Solana ID data backpack. And you can check, and if you're happy, you just leave it as it is. If you spot something where you're like, I don't know if I want to have them in future tapping into my data, you can disable, and they will just be kind of out of the picture, and they won't be able anymore to tap into your data points, like especially the off-chain integrations that you put into your backpack, right? And this privacy control does also impact your solid perks, which is, for example, our point system that we're rolling out. So we're obviously trying to incentivize the user to be transparent with the data because that creates the best effect on the DApps as well, right? Because if you shield all your data, the use case of Solana ID gets very marginal. So we want to obviously incentivize users as well to be open, to receive perks and targeted ads. And by toggling on the privacy control, you basically decrease the multiplier on your points, right? So that's one thing that happens just in the background, but you are always able to make the choice by yourself. And yeah, I think this privacy control feature is one of the important factors. Maybe to add on that, just one more sentence on the actual structure of the data storage. Everything that's on-chain is public, right? We cannot change that, and you cannot change that as a user. But everything that's off-chain belongs to you, not to Solana ID and not to any verifier, not to any other company. So if you on-ramp this into your Solana ID vault, then this data is stored as what we call verifiable credentials linked to your account. And those verifiable credentials are not stored on a central server with us. So you always have also control over those data points, and you can always block them entirely and say, I don't want to expose them anymore to any kind of activity.
Interesting. So could you kind of detail like what the difference is between something like this and then, the big dirty word of a social credit score?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously always this controversy, and the question comes up a lot because people are afraid when it comes to their identity. But this is why it requires a lot of education to make them understand that A, data is in your control, and B, we're not an kind of consumer agency that's trying to rate your account and red flag any accounts. Solana ID is trying to help users to leverage their good reputation. If you don't have Solana ID, you don't have a way to leverage your good reputation, period. We don't do anything else. We're not trying to analyze, I don't know, any bad doings you did and then put a red flag on your account, right? If I have to make one remark here. If you have an account that is on a sanctioned list or something, or involved in criminal activities based on some of the on-chain analysis tools that are available, that obviously impacts your score, which is, in my opinion, totally fine because it's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you're not trying to like pass a moral judgment. You're simply trying to make data available, as I understand.
Exactly. That is a big narrative that we're trying to always emphasize. We're trying to make reputation measurable, and reputation is broken down data points. So we're not trying to impose any kind of judgment that is morally or ethically biased by ourselves on the user.
Yeah, cool. I'm curious. So I know like people like Cubic have been working on the proofs, and like Civic has provided them a proof and other stuff. How does Solana ID integrate with proofs? Sort of, these things. Is that what your sort of Web 2 logins would be? Or are those simply proofs? Is there more to it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can also compare us to apps like Gitcoin Passport on Ethereum, and they are trying to solve a similar problem for Gitcoin because it's similar to Cubic, this kind of a voting mechanism for funding requests, right? And they also had a big problem with and stuff like this, so they have to build a fair system. Yeah, so Cubic is trying to solve that as well, and yeah, where Solana ID comes in, is we can probably add a little bit on that, or actually. Maybe you can rephrase the question. I don't know if you get. Are you asking me to explain how Solana ID can add on that and also improve?
Or more so, just like
Cubic, or?
Yeah, maybe just more in like reference to how it's similar and or like if would Solana ID function as a proof on Cubic or maybe on
Oh yeah.
Gitcoin in the future, or is it more of a like you grab that data from them and add it to your Solana ID? Is like how interoperable is it? I guess is the question.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's fully interoperable with any DApp. So you can as a DApp decide to be open for several integrations, which is also the beauty of decentralized identity and verifiable credentials. If you have one standard, there are standards out there. They can be adopted throughout different protocols, different apps, and you can basically aggregate different solutions in your own app. So you can make a decision what kind of logic you would like. You can go to Solana ID and check what kind of credentials we can offer, what kind of data points might be interesting for you. If the solid score is something that delivers a good snapshot of credibility of a user to you, that could work for your product. And you can basically implement that and maybe add a civic stamp, a civic passport on top of it to have like the proof of humanity from civic and some off-chain credentials from social media accounts and on-chain analysis from your wallet aggregation on top of it, right? So you can really build very beautiful, I think, aggregated products that build much safer frameworks for apps when it comes down to identifying who you are actually working with.
Awesome. How does the token integrate with this? So what is the token's use case within the Solana ID ecosystem?
Yeah. We had the token on our minds for a long time, essentially since we started the whole thing, because we always asked ourselves one question, which is, okay, if I have the solid score, which is a proof of credibility stamp to a certain extent that apps can query, how reliable is that signal? Because someone might have a good track record, but could change direction technically. So you always have this percentage that says, okay, to 80, this user might behave in the way that we expect the user to behave because of his track record. How can we increase that prediction score, let's say? And we can increase it by putting money on the table behind the word of the user. What does that mean? You can literally put the solid token profile and stake it, or if you want to put a better word on it, lock it. So you lock solid tokens behind your score, and it increases your credibility score, your solid score with us. So more solid locked behind your score, more future perks you can expect from apps because you just made yourself a bit more trustworthy by putting some money on the table, which is a very straightforward incentive model that I think works very well with humans. And you don't want to misbehave anymore. You don't want to deviate from your past track record if you know that some money is on the table that could be slashed and distributed in the protocol. So this way, we can kind of make everyone happy by giving the user better scores against their solid stake or solid lock, giving them more perks and giving more certainty of higher prediction scores to the apps. And that's, I think, the core utility that I want to describe with the solid token. Obviously, there's also the data to earn model, right? So you, as a user, you get paid in solid for sharing data and being transparent with your data backpack.
Do the dApps pay for that data in solid, or is that just an automatic conversion, like using something like Jupiter aggregator?
Yeah, we would do at least an optionality. So you can pay in solid, or you can say, I'm not used to this token. I'd like to do a conversion just from normal stable coin into, or my coin, whatever it is, into solid. So we don't want to have this as a hurdle for the apps to adopt the model.
Right. Yeah, of course. Cool. Let's see. So actually on the sort of idea of locking, it sounds somewhat similar to Jupiter's voting mechanism, right? Lock it for 30 days, get voting weight. And I think so far that's worked pretty well. I'm curious on one side you have the benefits, and then what does a user action that might cause slashing look like? Like, is that like you, I don't know, mint an NFT and rug it, or like how do you define that action?
Yeah. So I think the best example would be probably found in DeFi when we're talking about lending and borrowing protocols. That is where also the idea came up in the first place. We talked to a lot of lending protocols on various chains. We worked a lot on credit scores in Web3, and we found that they are not feasible yet. And we ask ourselves this simple question: how can we make them more feasible in the future to create under-collateralized or even collateral-free loans, which are more similar to what we know from the consumer loans. And this is where the idea came up. And this is also where the answer to your question comes in. If you borrow money on a lending and borrowing platform against lower collateral than other people get because you have a good score, and you still misbehave by not paying back on time or not behaving the way the protocol expected you to behave, there is the security now on your Solana ID side, which is the lock of your tokens. Right. So this is something to incentivize users or prevent users from misbehaving. Maybe that's the better way to frame it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's like almost using your Solana ID as collateral itself, especially for the locked tokens there. Yeah, that's
which is a lot
cool.
Yeah.
It reminds me back in the day of at least early Solana stuff was like Atadia and their handshake and attempt at under collateralized loans, but
yeah,
that's been a while.
It's like but we're still trying to make it work. I'm very optimistic that it will work at a given day, but it's not like collateral-free lending is not a use case that I would see as immediate right now, also for Solana ID. Yeah. Just from my experience with talking to lending and borrowing protocols, I can pretty confidently say that. There's other things like, airdrops and early access to games, early access to presets, all that kind of fun stuff. That is very feasible. Right. That's something we're doing right now. But I think the more difficult DeFi stuff is just a little more risky, right? Because it's DeFi, but it's coming. We're working on it.
Yeah, so like it's almost sort of like leveraging what you might get in the future against what you want to sort of borrow now, if I'm understanding correctly. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to do some broad questions, but is there anything you wanted to add to that? Anything I haven't covered at the moment that we can dive into?
I think we're pretty good. I think we're doing good. Nothing on top of my mind right now that we might have forgotten. So I'm good. What else do you have prepared?
I'm curious how, I guess, KYC might integrate with Solana ID. Like, does this replace the need for KYC in some cases? Do you still need KYC in some other places? What's the relationship there?
I'm a big fan of choices, right? So I don't want to push users into barriers and kind of tell them what to do. So with Solana ID, we're trying to adopt that model as well and give users choices. So you can opt out of KYC and decide to not attach any kind of verification of a nation state ID profile, which is great. You can still create a score that points towards uniqueness and points towards humanity. And there are other ways to prove certain things that you could normally find in KYC. Still, it's fair to say that KYC is a very proven model, that there's a lot of regulation that is still kind of based on KYC. There might be more regulation coming that is based on KYC. So I think we should be at least ready to find ways to adopt KYC into Web3 in a way that still puts the user in control to the most extent possible. Having that said, there is some KYC on-ramp as well to Solana ID, where we are using one of our strategic partners that we've been collaborating with a lot, which is the Concordium blockchain. And Concordium has been pioneering the kind of on-chain KYC area for long time. So their blockchain is kind of semi-permissioned, if you want to say. So if you want to create an account with Concordium, a KYC wallet, you have to pass through an identity check. But what is very important to understand is that the data points from your KYC check are not stored with Concordium, are not stored with any kind of government entity that can tap into them just for fun. No one can do that. You have the verifiable credentials, again, stored in your identity wallet, which is the Concordium wallet. So you can set up a Concordium wallet within minutes and put it in your aggregate of wallets at Solana. And we can query those credentials and put ZK proofs on chain that say something like this person is above 18 years, this person is not from country XYZ, or this person has a KYC check. So we can put those knowledge proofs on chain that are very kind of, they're not very sensitive, let's say, in terms of data, because we're not disclosing any kind of precise data points. So we're not passing on any personal identifiable data, which again also helps us to be ready for any kind of GDPR or data regulation problems, because we're not dealing with PII. And having that said, there is this path of putting KYC to your wallet. We're still putting the user in control and taking care that the data is being kind of treated in a way that the user likes the data to be treated in. And now you can increase your score with that KYC stamp. So it does have an impact on your overall score, but you can decide if you want to do it or not.
Right. So you kind of have the ability for a separation of church and state, which is like if church is your actual identity, maybe you have all the data that it provides or whatever, still accessible without accessing that actual identity. That's really neat. I think that's about it. I guess one more, last fun question. Do you see any use cases within maybe the Jupyter ecosystem for Solana ID? Like what might it improve?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's actually a lot we could talk about. As like we have been in touch with many exchanges also from other chains for design kind of feedback and discovery. And it depends what you're building. If you're building a perp protocol and you have perpetuals on your chain, you might want to feed some identity data into that to tailor the experience of trading. So if a user already has a very strong record of trading and not getting liquidated a lot, or just you have some data points that you could call to give the person some perks again in exchange for his trustworthy and solid trading experience, no pun intended. And then this is one thing, like perps is definitely one thing where you could attach, but also definitely in kind of those DAO mechanics that are happening inside of Jupyter. There's a lot about contributions. It's a lot about community engagement. You're trying to build a very decentralized platform. You're not trying, you're actually doing it, which is great. And I think that's also strongly related to identity data and kind of tracking some of those contributions and giving back to the users that are contributing is something that's already top of mind, I think. And you're always trying to kind of improve the efficiency of those systems. And with Solana ID, I think there could be also things to build around that to make it more bulletproof.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think one of the major things that we focus on, at least in terms of the working group stuff, is like, all right, how do we effectively measure active contribution over passive participation? Because what makes something grow? Well, it's people working together and doing the thing. Cool.
Yeah. And maybe also to add on that, lastly, Solana ID is about targeted advertisement and helping apps to attract the right users. So any app that's trying to attract users and is trying to attract the right users for them can find product market fit with Solana ID. So if you guys are looking to onboard users to Jupyter and have them trading on your exchange, have them using your perp product, have them engage in your voting, obviously you can tap into Solana ID, identify the right users for the things you want to do with them, and push out some targeted ads on other third-party platforms that decide to display those ads that are highly frequent with users, right? So obviously this is also one of the main use cases of Solana ID.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I think there's a lot of really interesting exploration that could be done here. Just on like a personal note, like trying to figure out how to I've been working on some like very low fidelity reputation scores for DAO tools for the last a year and a half. And that's really like, did you post? Did you like complete the proposal? Did you do this? You get some points for that. It's not exactly robust, and it only measures inside the app. So I think that sort of behavior in general is super useful, because obviously if it's on a single app, it can be somewhat sybiled or manufactured. So super interesting.
Yeah, let's put it in the internet. The internet is a big place and we can do a lot of things there. And Web3 is making the internet much, much more interoperable, but we should also put identity in that framework and make identity in the internet much more interoperable, because in Web2 it is kind of broken, the way we treat identity. Just wanted to add that on.
Or that, identity doesn't even really exist yet.
Yeah,
I don't remember who it was, but like when it was I think it was one of the early Bitcoin contributors, but said something along the lines of the internet should have been born with security. And then I think he also might have said identity, because security meaning blockchain and identity meaning like actually owning your data. Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Well, thank you, Simon. Is there anything you'd like to add? Otherwise, I think I'll just stop the recording and we can rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, no, it has been fun, Kimo. Thanks for the good questions, and we're very excited. We're very happy as well to be part of the launch pad and everything, to be in the voting. I think it's fair to say Solana ID is kind of new kid on the block. We haven't been around for like 3-4 years, like some of the other projects that are on here, but we definitely have a very precise plan for the future, and I think we definitely also have a need in the market that we can fill. So I want to also emphasize to people to dig into that project, to ask questions in the forums, and to interact with us, and to kind of find the, how do you say in English, find the problem with it, whatever it might be, try to find it.
Some good critiques.
Find it, then ask it, like I'm very active on all the on the research forum. I'm on Discord, so we're always trying to be there. We have some very good community members that are also in the ID space that are also answering questions for us. So engage with us.